My name is Ben McKenzie. I'm the Fractional AI Officer for 1584 Design, and today I'm going to talk about switching an interior design studio from Claude to Codex for AI. And it's grounded in a real problem because originally we thought that this operator could just work off of her laptop, but she's on the go so much that we realized that wasn't going to work. So she needs to be able to run her AI systems from her phone, and Claude doesn't really offer a good way to do that right now, but Codex does. And so what this highlights is the requirement of making the AI OS portable. That should be an operational requirement, especially when things are moving so fast with AI, because the tools are changing all the time, and the best platform for you can change when things like how connectors work, whether or not mobile access is supported, and how the models they use, computer control, team features, when all that stuff changes, you need to be able to pivot if you discover that the platform you're using right now doesn't work. So the AI OS that you use, and if you haven't heard about an AI OS, you don't know what that is, we recorded a video about that I'll link in the description below, but it should be built so that switching platforms is as easy as possible. And so how do you decide when it's the right time to do this? Basically, you have to identify your requirements, what your priorities are, and in this case, the operator needs to be able to work off of her phone, and then compare the benefits of switching to the costs, and then finally only switch if your current platform violates a key requirement of yours, and then also only when the benefits outweigh the costs of switching. In this particular case, we created a list of benefits versus costs that I'll go into now. So the primary benefit is that Codex gives this operator mobile access so that she can run her AI OS, her AI operating system, from her phone with complete access to all of the business projects, opportunities, SOPs, key files that provide AI context, all the skills that we've created for her, all the active threads and conversations so that she can seamlessly go back and forth between her phone and her laptop. And the issue before was that even though Claude had a rudimentary ability to do this through something called dispatch, it wasn't very good. The main issue is that it forced you to use one continuous chat. And if you know anything about AI, that presents real problems because what happens is you can't do things in parallel. And you also get this issue where context gets confused. Like the AI, if it has the context in its memory for like 4 different tasks, it's going to lose track of things and get confused really easily. And there's some other technical reasons that I won't go into around why that doesn't really work when you're trying to run robust AI-driven operations. But suffice it to say that Claude is behind Codex with respect to being able to sync mobile and desktop agent use, because Codex actually allows the operator to remotely access all of the things that she needs in order to run her business. Now, there's some secondary benefits that add up to being pretty significant. The first is that if you've ever used computer control with Claude, you know it's not very good, and that's the ability of AI to control applications on your computer and like click around and do stuff. It's not very good in Claude because it makes you stop working. You have to stop working while it works, and it can't use multiple windows, and it's not as seamless. It runs into more problems. Whereas Codex, they bought a team that has for years been developing really good computer control capabilities, at least when it comes to Mac computers. So if you do any computer-based work, and especially if you use software that doesn't have good APIs that let you build a connector so your agent can talk to those systems, computer control is really useful because an agent can go in there and take screenshots of an app and click around and do stuff, even if you don't have a connector built for it. The second thing is, this is really just a restatement of what we said before. Having chats be synced between devices is really, really helpful. And then an improved chat experience also becomes significant when you're using AI a lot because Claude is slow and it's really wordy. It's not just wordy in terms of having a long response. It also speaks in a confusing way sometimes. Like it's excessively metaphorical. It can be trying to say something that's essentially simple, but it'll make it way harder to understand compared to Codex. And then finally, for interior design, obviously renderings are sometimes a part of our process. And so the ChatGPT Images 2 model is really, really good when it comes to that. It makes rendering very easy. It's one of the most sophisticated rendering models on the market, and you get that automatically when you use Codex. Now, in terms of the costs of switching, they are non-negligible, like they're real, because in this case, I'm the fractional AI officer for 1584 Design, the firm that we're talking about, and I've got to spend my time migrating the AI OS over to Codex. And that's time that I can't spend doing other things like supporting the operator directly on strategy, implementing things for the business. It's going to take time and that's going to cost money. And part of this is moving Claude Cowork projects that were created outside the AIOS directory. Because if you've watched our other videos about how to set up your AIOS, you know that we're pretty bullish on the idea of having your AIOS, all the files that drive your AIOS, have them be on a computer, actually in your file system. The problem is that when most people use Claude Cowork, when they use projects, and that's one of the most intuitive ways to start getting into AI, they usually make those projects outside of their AIOS. So it's really common for that stuff to be kind of siloed and to be sort of stuck inside of the Claude ecosystem. So we got to pull those things out. And it's not super complicated. We just copy files from where they're living outside the AIOS, and we put them into the right place inside the AIOS. And migrating from Claude to Codex or any other platform isn't incredibly complicated either when you have the AIOS set up correctly. It's mostly about just setting the right home directory and importing some things like skills, probably setting up some connectors in Codex that were already set up in Claude. So there's some rework there. So it's not an incredibly difficult task, but it takes time and it takes skill and it takes insight into how this stuff works. Fourth, whenever you have one of your employees switching systems, it's going to take them some time to get used to that. You're going to incur some efficiency costs when the operator gets used to the new interface. And then finally, depending on how much copy you write, this may or may not matter, but Codex is a worse copywriter in my opinion. I think that all AI is bad at writing copy. So unless you have really good writing examples for your copy tasks, it's going to be a challenge no matter what. You've probably seen AI slop out in the marketplace when it comes to copy, but it just so happens that Codex, in my experience at least, is worse than Claude is. And I would also say that Claude is a better visual designer. So if that matters to you, weigh that when you're thinking about switching. Part of switching the operator over to using Codex instead of Claude, part of it is how we set up physical devices. And in this case, the interior design business has a single laptop that is always on and it's parked in one place and it's always connected to the internet. And that's what we call the host. That's where the AIOS lives and runs. But what we can do now is we can give the operator access points to that host and potentially other team members too. The most important thing is the operator's phone because that's her primary interface, but also her laptop. Previously, she would work directly on the AIOS laptop. And that's not the worst thing, but really we want her to be able to take her devices anywhere she needs and have the AIOS laptop parked in one spot, always on, always connected. We can extract a couple of lessons from this example. The first is that you want to keep your AIOS portable because platforms are going to change, they're going to evolve. And as they do, you might find that one fits your requirements better than another. If one is better enough, then it might motivate you to switch. And if your key files, your SOPs, brand files, your project skills, if the things that you need to run your business using AI are trapped inside of some other platform, it's not like it's going to be impossible to get it out, but it's going to take a lot more time to switch. It's going to take cleanup, translation, reconstruction, and that's going to have to be done by someone, probably a combination of your operator and potentially somebody like me, a fractional AI officer. And really, our time is better spent creating new AI capabilities for you. And so with a little bit of forethought, you can save that time and speed things up. And so what you end up with is flexibility so that whether things stay the way I believe they currently are, where it makes sense to build your AIOS in a local file system on a computer and have it be hosted there centrally and you just access it from different places, or if it makes more sense to move your files into the cloud, whether it's Google Drive, Dropbox, Fast.io. Eventually, I think that providers like Anthropic and OpenAI, they're going to create cloud file systems to host your files for you. Wherever things go, you're going to be able to shift with the tide so that you never get stuck with an expensive platform tax that you didn't have to pay in the first place if you had just done things more intelligently. The second lesson is around when to switch. And the key insight is switch when a platform fails to meet a key requirement. So if you know generally what your requirements are and you see that they're not being met by a given platform, you want to write down that requirement so that you focus on it, so that you prioritize it, and then research which platforms meet it. And this would be something that your operator would do if you only have an operator running your AI, or if you have somebody like me, a fractional AI officer, that person would advise your operator and how and whether to make the switch. But do your research and then compare the benefits of switching to the costs. And if the costs outweigh the benefits, don't switch. If none of your key requirements are being violated by your current platform, don't switch. Otherwise, it might be something to think about. And if you have your AIOS set up correctly, it's not going to be very painful.